I wanted to review the capabilities of the online mooring chart page, especially for people who are providers who have more capabilities than the applicants would. Just in general, the top of the page provides some options for controlling how the map will look, and then there's the map itself. I'll point out that there are two ways of viewing the map. One is using Google Maps, which lets you view your map or chart right here in the web browser. But there's also a way to view the charting through Google Earth, which is a third-party product that's free. If you don't have the product, you can click on this install link, and this will give you instructions for installing the product on your machine. Once it's installed, you can just click on Google Earth to display the information from Online Mooring about your harbor. There are also some things at the bottom which are more informational, and also some more long-term settings, whereas the options at the top of the page only affect what's going to happen now. The options down here at the bottom allow you to permanently configure how your mapping will work. So I'll go through each of these. I think what I'll go through first is some of the settings. Uh, what uh, what you'll see is as you move your mouse around, the cursor values change. So if you want to see the location of any um, location in your harbor, you can just click on the map and it'll show you the coordinates. And if you wanted to, you can take those coordinates and move wherever you clicked so that it's in the center of the map. The other thing is that as you drag your map around, you'll see that the coordinates of the corners of the map change. So this sort of gives you a sense of what coordinates are included in your current view. And if you were to click the Set Bounds button, this would cause Online Mooring to come back to show you these coordinates when you first come into the map or come into the chart. Be careful about this, because another thing that Online Mooring does is to validate that every coordinate you enter is within this range of coordinates that are on your initial view of the map. So if you were to set your view in too close, it might give you a good way to view things in one harbor, but it will give you an error when you try to enter coordinates that might be in another harbor that wouldn't be in your initial view. So it's important that you figure that the right way. The other thing is that within the charting, there are some tools to be able to visualize how big the swing areas would be around each of the moorings. Uh, and often there is a minimum and maximum range of scope values that are allowed. Scope being the length of the chain divided by the depth of the water. And by entering in the minimum and maximum scopes and hitting this button to set it permanently, the map will show you, if you want, those minimum and maximum areas, so that you can compare it to the actual swing areas that are shown based on the actual mooring characteristics. Alright, so let me go into Google Earth. And when you get into Google Earth, the first thing I'll point out is that on the left side, in the Places section, under Temporary Places, there is a thing that wouldn't be there otherwise that says Online Mooring Data. If you were to expand that, you would see all the different types of data that you can view about your harbor within Google Earth. If you click on any of those layers, for example, by clicking on moorings, it'll zoom in and show you just that information on the chart. You can zoom in more if you want. I'm going to zoom into West Neck Harbor here in Shelter Island, New York. And as you get close, you'll start to see some mooring balls, or at least symbols for them. And if you click on any one of these mooring balls, you will see information, summary level information about the mooring, and there are links there to view more information about the mooring. For example, if you were to click on the reference number, that would show you the information about the application that's currently assigned to be at that mooring. If you click on that, The first time you click on it, you may get a login prompt, like we are here. So what you need to do is to hit the login button, log in a second time, because Google Earth doesn't remember who you logged in as. Now I'll go back to Google Earth. Now if I click that the second time, it'll bring me right to the application. And you can view all the information and click to anywhere else in online mooring from that point. The other thing I wanted to point out is that when you click on something, and I also want to point out that you can see a picture of the vessel if one's in the database, you can also view a calendar for each, or for the berth that you've highlighted. If you click this calendar icon, it brings you to a page that shows you when the berth is being used. If it's available, it'll show in pink. If it's in use, it'll be green. And you can also choose to, if you are a provider that both permits berths but also allows rentals to be recorded through the product, you can also view the rental status. In this case, this berth is not available for rental, so it shows as gray throughout. But in this case, this berth is permitted, and it's permitted for this entire month, and you can flip through to other months and see the status there as well. In addition to looking at the moorings themselves, you can look at swing areas. In the database we have information about the mooring tackle and the vessel length and also the depth of water, and using all that information we can draw swing areas around each of the moorings, and you can see whether there are overlaps or not. If you click on any one of these swing areas, you'll see all of the measurements from the database that went into calculating the swing area. In this case we had a depth entered and chain information and vessel information, so this looks pretty accurate. If you look at some areas, you might find some overlaps between swing areas. That might be a cause for concern, something that you may want to look at to see whether the moorings need to be spread further apart. I also mentioned earlier that minimum scope area and maximum scope area thing. So here in Google Earth you can turn on the minimum, and you can see how your actual swing areas compare to that minimum. In this case it looks like most of these swing areas are at the minimum, so they look like they're okay. Here you can see that this one, the minimum area is smaller than the actual swing area, so that's okay. You could also turn on the maximum scope areas, and what you can see is that the swing area on this particular one is right in the middle, or right where it needs to be. It's bigger than the minimum, smaller than the max, so it's fine. We can also, in the product, keep track of two sets of coordinates for each mooring. And if the and two coordinates might be where the mooring is supposed to be, and also where it actually is, or was the most recent time you went out to look for it. And mooring positions can change because of tide conditions, because of wind, because someone put the mooring someplace where they weren't, or because the records were incorrect. At any rate, when there is a difference between where it was supposed to be and where it actually was, a little tail will show up, and envision, or just picture that the mooring had slid along this line from where it was supposed to be to where it is now. If you click on that line, you'll see both sets of coordinates, and you'll also see if you wanted to get the mooring back to where it was supposed to be, this gives you the distance you need to move it and the bearing that you need to move it to get it to the right location. You can also label each of the moorings here in the harbor. In this case, we're labeling the moorings based on the mooring number. And the reason that we did that, and I'm going to minimize Google Earth here, or at least make it smaller, on our options page, or our options section, we had chosen to label the thing based on the mooring number. You can choose a number of different information from our database. You could label, put the applicant's name next to each of the moorings. You could take the vessel name or the reg number and put it next to each of the moorings. Any one of these is fine. In fact, you can put multiple pieces of information next to each berth in the harbor. If you check this multiple option, you can now choose multiple fields from the database to put next to each berth in your harbor. So if you wanted to both put the applicant's name and, let's say, the reference number. If I just click on the reference number, it'll select that and unselect the other one. So if you want to select both, the first one you click on, the second one you do control click, and that way that allows you to keep both selected. If instead you wanted to select everything, these first three, you can do shift click, and that'll select everything between what's selected in the current location. So that's just for your information. All right, so that's the labeling capability of the product. Also want to point out that we have the ability to validate the coordinates that are entered into the database. This is not a core part of our product. It's an add-on that requires some additional effort on our part and an additional fee. But to give you an example of what we've done, here's a situation where there is a portion of a harbor that is reserved for a particular yacht club. And so Shelter Island Yacht Club is supposed to be in this area. When coordinates are entered into our database, we can validate that the coordinates are within this area for moorings that are in Shelter Island Yacht Club, and give an error if they're not. We can also set up areas that are exclusion areas, such as shellfish beds or channels, and we can make sure that the moorings are not within those areas where they're not supposed to be. I also want to point out that we have the ability to overlay a nautical chart on top of Google Earth. The nautical chart doesn't exactly look like NOAA charts, but it contains all the information from the NOAA charts. It contains the depth soundings, it contains the marks in the harbor, and I guess that's all I'll point out there. And then if you were really interested in making a scale diagram or visualization of what things would look like, you can do this boats layer, and what that'll do is it'll put a scale image of a sailboat based on the vessel length that you've entered into your database, and it should show up any moment. And using this, you should be able to visualize your harbor and see the boats. For some reason, they're not appearing right now. Another thing I wanted to point out, now that we are going back to Google Maps, is that there's a way to color code the moorings that appear in your on your chart. Normally, all of your berths, whether they're slips, whether they're moorings, whether they're docks, all appear as a mooring ball symbol on the chart. If you wanted to, you could change this so that you could color code based on some information in our database. For example, if you want to color code based on whether the moorings have been inspected or not, that can be done by doing the inspection status and then clicking the update button. If you wanted to color code based on whether they paid or not, or whether they are permitted or not, all those are options. And underneath the map, it shows a legend to show you what each of the colors means with the option that you've selected. That's all I have for this point.